Good Monday, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for August the 28th. Today we are reading together in 2 Kings chapter 2. 2 Kings chapter 2, we're going to see David passing on from the scene of Israel, and his son Solomon is going to be established as the new king. And we're going to see the instructions that David has given to Solomon concerning some, I will call it loose ends that he needs to tie up in order to hopefully allow his kingdom to be as prosperous as possible and to avoid some of the issues maybe that David himself endured at the hands of some particular individuals. So let me get the text of 2 Kings up on the screen. Or excuse me, 1 Kings chapter 2 is what I should say. 1 Kings chapter 2, let me get that up on the screen. There we go. And let's read along together here, beginning in 1 Kings chapter 2 and verse number 1. 1 Kings chapter 2, verse number 1, as the time approached for David to die, he ordered his son Solomon, "As for me, I'm going the way of all the earth. Be strong and be a man, and keep your obligation to Yahweh your God to walk in his ways, and to keep his statutes, commands, ordinances, and decrees. This is written in the law of Moses, so that you will have success in everything you do and wherever you turn, and so that Yahweh will fulfill his promise that he made to me. If your sons take care to walk faithfully before me with all their heart and all their soul, you will never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. You also know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me, and what he did to the two commanders of Israel's army, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He murdered them in a time of peace to avenge bloodshed in war. He spilled that blood on his own waistband and on the sandals of his feet. Act according to your wisdom, and do not let his gray hair descend to Sheol in peace. Show kindness to the sons of Barzillai, the Gileadites, and let them be among those who eat at your table, because they supported me when I fled from your brother Absalom. Keep an eye on Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjaminite from Baharim, who is with you. He uttered malicious curses against me the day I went to Mahanaim, but he came down to meet me at the Jordan River, and I swore to him by Yahweh, I will never kill you with the sword. So don't let him go unpunished, for you are a wise man. You know how to deal with him, to bring his gray head down to Sheol with blood." Then David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. The length of time of David's reign, the length of time David reigned over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem. Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his kingship was firmly established. Now, Adonijah, son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. She asked, "Do you come peacefully?" "Peacefully," he replied, and then asked, "May I talk with you?" "Well, go ahead," she answered. "You know the kingship was mine," he said. "All Israel expected me to be king. But then the kingship was turned over to my brother, for Yahweh gave it to him. So now I have just one request of you. Don't turn me down." She said to him, "Go on." He replied, "Please speak to King Solomon, since he won't turn you down, and let him give me Abishag the Shunammite as a wife. Let him give me Abishag the Shunammite as a wife." "Well, very well," Bathsheba replied. "I will speak to the king for you." So Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him about Adonijah. The king stood up to greet her, bowed to her, sat down on his throne, and had a throne placed for the king's mother. So she sat down at his right hand. Then she said, "I have just one small request of you. Don't turn me down." "Well, go ahead and ask, mother," the king replied, "for I won't turn you down." So she said, "Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to your brother Adonijah as a wife." King Solomon answered his mother, "Why are you requesting Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Since he is my elder brother, you might as well ask the kingship for him, for the priest Abiathar and Joab, son of Zeruiah." Then King Solomon took an oath by Yahweh, "May God punish me and do so severely if Adonijah has not made this request at the cost of his life." And now, as Yahweh lives, the one who established me, seated me on the throne of my father David, and made me a dynasty as he promised, I swear Adonijah will be put to death today. Then King Solomon dispatched Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, who struck down Adonijah, and he died. The king said to the priest Abiathar, go to your fields in Anathoth. Even though you deserve to die, I will not put you to death today, since you carry the ark of Lord Yahweh in the presence of my father David, and you suffered through all my father suffered. So Solomon banished Abiathar from him, or from being Yahweh's priest, and it fulfilled Yahweh's prophecy he had spoken at Shiloh against Eli's family. The news reached Joab, since he had supported Adonijah, but not Absalom. Joab fled to Yahweh's tabernacle and took hold of the horns of the altar. It was reported to King Solomon, Joab has fled to Yahweh's tabernacle and is now beside the altar. Then Solomon sent Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and told him, go and strike him down. So Benaiah went to the tabernacle and said to Joab, this is what the king says, come out. But Joab said, no, for I will die here. So Benaiah took the message back to the king. This is what Joab said, and this is how he answered me. The king said to him, do just as he says, strike him down and bury him in order to remove from me and from my father's family the blood that Joab shed without just cause. Yahweh will bring back his own blood on his head, because he struck down 2 men more righteous and better than he, without my father David's knowledge. With his sword, Joab murdered Abner, son of Ner, commander of Israel's army, and Amasa, son of Jether, the commander of Judah's army. The responsibility for their deaths will come back to Joab and to his descendants forever. But for David, his descendants, his dynasty, and his throne, there will be peace from Yahweh forever. Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, went up, struck down Joab, and put him to death. He was buried at his house in the wilderness. And then the king appointed Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, in Joab's place over the army. And he appointed the priest Zadok in Abiathar's place. Then the king summoned Shimei and said to him, build a house for yourself in Jerusalem and live there. But don't leave there and go anywhere else. On the day you do leave and cross the Kidron Valley, know for sure that you will certainly die. Your blood will be on your own head. Shimei said to the king, the sentence is fair. Your servant will do as my lord the king has spoken. And Shimei lived in Jerusalem for a long time. But then at the end of 3 years, 2 of Shimei's slaves ran away to Achish, son of Maacah, king of Gath. Shimei was informed, look, your slaves are in Gath. So Shimei saddled his donkey and set out to Achish at Gath to search for his slaves. He went and brought them back from Gath. It was reported to Solomon that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had returned. So the king summoned Shimei and said to him, didn't I make you swear by Yahweh and warn you, saying, on the day you leave and go anywhere else, know for sure that you will certainly die? And you said to me, the sentence is fair, I will obey. So why have you not kept Yahweh's oath and the command that I gave you? The king also said, you yourself know all the evil you did to my father David. Therefore, Yahweh has brought back your evil on your head. But King Solomon will be blessed, and David's throne will remain established before Yahweh forever. Then the king commanded Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck Shimei down, and he died. So the kingdom was established in Solomon's hands. And that is 1 Kings chapter 2. Again, the passing of David and the tying up of many loose ends. We see at the beginning that as David is approaching death, we've talked about this before in various settings, whether it be Abraham or Jacob and his deathbed, his deathbed words specifically. Think about Jesus speaking to his disciples. The things that David says here to Solomon are the things that are most dear to him, that he sees as being most important, the things that are really weighing on his heart. So it makes sense for David to tell Solomon that you need to be strong and be a man. Maybe David's saying that, encouraging him to follow his example. Maybe maybe David is saying that to be even a better man than I am, because we know for all of David's positive things that he did, he certainly should be remembered as one of the greatest men in Scripture. There were certain ways in which David was not very strong. He was not very strong dealing with enemies sometimes. He was not very strong dealing with those within his own family who did not do what was right. So his encouragement to Solomon is, be strong, be a man, do what is right. And what is most important is that you keep your obligations to Yahweh, that you walk in his ways and do as you need to do. Solomon, go back and think about the text of Deuteronomy and think about how within the law, Yahweh said very clearly, those who are faithful to me will be blessed, but those who disobey me will be cursed. Keep those things in mind, Solomon, and allow them to dictate how you rule as king over this land. Because if you do it well, remember, if my sons guard their way to walk faithfully before me, then there will always be a descendant of David on the throne. So that's the very first thing he reminds Solomon about. Make sure you walk in the ways of God. But additionally, there's some characters, some individuals that you need to be aware of. Number one, watch out for Joab. Think about all the treachery that he did before me, that he did not only to me, but to others. Use wisdom in how you deal with him. Show kindness to Barzillai, for he showed kindness to me while I was on the run from your brother Absalom. But also remember Shimei and all the curses that he offered against me. Again, use your wisdom in how you deal with this man. So these two, specifically Joab and Shimei, are going to be addressed later on in the chapter. But before we get there, we see in verses 10, 11, and 12, just the history of David. He ruled for 40 total years, 7 of those in Hebron and 33 of those in Jerusalem. And now it is Solomon's turn to sit on his father's throne, and his kingship was firmly established. This is the reality. The reality is the kingship is firmly established as being Solomon's, but that doesn't mean that Adonijah isn't going to maybe make one last-ditch effort to see if he can get any sort of power whatsoever. And he does this by calling Bathsheba to him and making a request of her that she would speak to Solomon, and that Abishag, the concubine of David, the young lady who kept David warm in his old age, that's mentioned in the previous chapter, in chapter 1, let him be his wife. Why? Well, this, I can only imagine this is a power play. This is to show that, Adonijah has some sort of power in Jerusalem in the fact that he now has the previous king's concubine. That's the only thing I could think of. And Bathsheba, there's some debate on Bathsheba's thinking here. Some think that Bathsheba is just kind of being naive, and she's a woman who loves a good love story and loves to play matchmaker, so she's going to allow this to happen. But other people think that she is well aware of how Solomon is going to perceive this and how Solomon's going to respond to this. I'll probably lean to that direction. Now, Bathsheba knows that her son is going to understand exactly what this is, what this request represents, and he's going to take care of just another potential danger to his rule. So she takes this request to Solomon. Solomon responds as you would expect for Solomon to respond. He says, well, Mom, why doesn't he just ask for the whole kingdom? Why doesn't he just do that? If he's going to ask for my dad's concubine, why not just ask for everything? So he goes and he has Adonijah put to death. Following that, we have Abiathar's banishment. Remember, he was the priest who supported David's opposition. So he is banished away from the kingdom. He is not killed because Solomon appreciates the fact that he did serve Yahweh, did carry the Ark of the Covenant and such. So he's not going to kill this priest, but he's going to banish him. And this does cut off the priesthood from the family of Eli, which is a promise that is made going all the way back to 1 Samuel chapter 2. Additionally, we see Joab's execution, that he hears about all these things that are happening, that Adonijah has been put to death, that Abiathar has been banished. He's thinking, oh no, I'm next. So he runs to the tabernacle, grabs onto the horns. And you might remember this story from back in 2 Samuel. It just left me who it was that was being discussed. I'm going to try to remember really fast. Oh, let's see. Who was it? Remember, somebody else ran and grabbed onto the horns of the altar, thinking that would give them some sort of leniency. I just cannot remember who it was right now off the top of my head. Let me see here. I don't remember who it was. I do not remember. But whoever it was, it's back in 2 Samuel. This was a cultural or a cultural practice where you would go to the worship place, whatever deity you worship, you grab onto the horns of the altar, and that would be a sign that you desire mercy. And so there might be some mercy granted to you. Solomon's having none of it. And that goes back to, I believe it's Exodus 17. I believe that's the case. I think it's Exodus 17, where it speaks about if somebody's done what is wrong, you rip them off the horns of the altar and you hold them accountable for the sins that they have committed. They still must suffer for what they have done. They're not going to get mercy just because they think they've grabbed onto the horns of the altar for anything of that nature. So we see him sending Benaiah, which Benaiah ends up serving. He's going to end up serving as the head of the army, and he is going to, in this moment, go ahead and start taking care of some of these loose ends of the people that David has previously warned him about. I'm trying to find this really quickly as we're talking, and I just cannot figure out for the life of me who it was. Cannot remember who it was that did this previously. But anyways, he ends up getting Joab. He ends up putting him to death. And Solomon's reasoning for this, he extends grace to Abiathar, but he ends up putting Joab to death. Why? Well, because Abiathar, again, was a priest. He served positively in many ways. But Joab, a lot of things he did was just very ruthless. He was very calculated, very cunning, very conniving man, and he had a lot of blood on his hands. He killed Abner in cold blood. He killed Amasa in cold blood, and for that he was not going to receive mercy. So Joab ends up being judged in this chapter as well. And then finally we see Shimei. Shimei is shown mercy by Solomon initially. He's shown mercy. He says, hey, as long as you stay here, you'll be fine. I won't kill you. But if you ever leave, know that it's your decision to leave, and your death, your blood will be on your own hands. And unfortunately, he does end up leaving, and Solomon calls him to the carpet on it. And again, Benaiah dispatches Shimei as well. So many of the loose ends that Solomon, that were left over from David's reign, Solomon takes care of in one way or another. And again, I want to recognize what is said at the very end of the chapter that was also said back in verse number 12, that his kingship was firmly established. Now we see the kingdom was established in Solomon's hand. Again, he is officially the king. Many loose ends are tied up. So now we're wondering, all right, how is this going to go moving forward? Solomon seems to be someone who's willing to take care of business, willing to do what's necessary. Is that going to continue? Well, we'll think about that as we continue moving forward in our read of 1 Samuel, looking tomorrow at 1 Samuel chapter 3, which gives us probably one of the more well-known stories from Solomon's reign about the wisdom that he had, and then an application of that wisdom concerning the two women who were fighting over a baby. We'll read about that tomorrow. I appreciate so much you tuning in for this reading today. If you have any questions or comments about the text, please feel free to leave that in the comments section below. Again, hope you have a great rest of your day, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow as we continue reading through 1 Kings. Take care, and God bless.